Hello everyone, artist Charles Wolf here. We're going to start today with this color palette that you see in front of you: titanium white, Mars black, cobalt blue, cadmium yellow medium, and raw umber. I'm going to start with my knife on this 12 by 24 inch canvas board and put the raw umber in a horizontal line about 1/3 from the bottom of the canvas. I'm going to go right into my cobalt blue and start applying that above and filling in the top half of this panoramic landscape that we're going to create today. I'm feeling like I wanted to do an impressionist style piece, and when I saw these 12 by 24 inch canvases, I immediately knew I want to do a panoramic landscape. Now I'm going to be using the knife for the entirety of this piece. This is going to be a palette knife composition. It's a little bit challenging, to be honest, to do a impressionist style landscape with only a knife. It can be done, many artists have done it before, but for me it was sort of a new experience because I usually use the knife when I do my abstracts. So having to use my knife skills and also get a nice looking and somewhat detailed piece and the layering of the colors for the impressionism, it took a little bit of time, but although it took a lot of time to put this together and then edit it together, of course, because I had over an hour and a half of footage I had to cut down to about 20 minutes, it worked out in the end, and I was pretty happy with the piece that I got out of it overall. I'm going to start in with some titanium white here, and that's going to be the basis of my clouds. I'm going to be doing a lot of putting things onto the canvas and adding layers. This painting, because I'm using lots of little knife strokes, needs to be very layered for it to read correctly, and I'm going to start blending the white into the blue and creating somewhat of a gradient. I'm actually going to be finishing the sky off, actually off camera. It just got so long and so much material recorded that I needed to finish it up the very last seconds off camera, but you're going to see almost everything that I do except for this very, very last step of the sky. What you're going to see is the very top of the sky is going to be left very close to that cobalt blue, if not that color coming through exactly. And I didn't like how unrealistic that was looking. So at the very, very end, after I finished the entire piece, I just went back and added some light blue, a little bit mixture of a white and the cobalt, of course, and put that on the top and just sort of made it look a little bit more realistic. And I think it really brought the whole piece together in a very nice way. I will often do this where I will paint a whole piece. I'll do the recording live while I'm painting, and then I will go back a few days later and look at what I have and maybe make some adjustments. Okay, I'm going to let myself just paint away here, and I hope that you find this enjoyable, and I thank you so much for stopping by and viewing this piece. If you have a little bit of time after you watch this video, be sure to check out my blog. I have an art blog. It's impulsiveartistry.blogspot.com. Again, that's impulsiveartistry.blogspot.com, and check that out. There's all kinds of articles about painting. I have lots of photography on there. I'm also a photographer, and I love going out in nature, and when I'm walking around, I take lots of photographs as inspiration for my paintings. So be sure to head over there and check that out. Again, it's impulsiveartistry.blogspot.com. I'm going to start in on this tree line here using my knife, and I'm going to start with a mid-tone color, kind of lighten with some white, and that's going to be the sort of the outline of where I want my trees to go. I'm going to of course come back in with some cooler, darker colors to create the contrast and some lighter colors for highlights, but I just needed a nice middle ground color to work off of. Starting to bring in a darker brown here with that umber. I decided to do a very distant line of trees in the far background, and then I'm going to put some closer, more foreground trees on top of these to kind of hide them behind. As I went along, I realized that it's a little bit too static left to right. I often do this where I get a little bit too horizontal, and I want there to be some depth. So I'm going to go back about halfway through this piece and actually change that back line of trees a little bit. So if you're painting along with me, or going to try something similar to this piece, maybe try putting a little bit more of a difference from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. And by that I mean make sure that your left-hand trees are a little bit shorter and your right-hand trees are a little bit bigger, so that it looks like the ones on the left are kind of receding into the distance, and the ones as it gets to the right of that tree line, it's going to get a little bit bigger and a little bit closer to you. It'll just make the piece overall a little bit more dramatic. I've also started putting in some of the bank here of these closer little bushes or trees. I think they turn into trees on the left-hand side. We will be using a good amount of the cadmium yellow medium, so be sure to have plenty of it on your palette. I just wanted to mention here really quick that I am speeding this video up a little bit. It's about 2 times normal, and the reason for that, and my motivation for that, is the fact that it was just so long having it full length. It was going to be about 40 minutes of material, and that just takes a long time to upload to YouTube and the whole bit. So I try to keep my videos a little bit shorter, around 20 minutes, and because I wanted to show you the full painting, but then also had to think about time constraints, I decided to shorten it by speeding it up a little bit. Starting to really work on these foreground trees here, I'm using some cadmium yellow medium, and I'm just going to use that as my highlight color for now. And then I'm going to go back in with some umber in a minute and create some contrast and some shadows on the right hand side. In my mind, the sun is sort of back behind me to the left, and it's shining down through some clouds onto this beautiful field, this large grassy meadow, and it's kind of going away to the right. I'm also going to be putting in a larger tree on the right hand side for balance and contrast, and you're kind of looking between these trees into this meadow beyond. Overall, it's a very simple composition, and I know that, but I wanted it to be simple enough so that I could do it fairly effectively with only a knife. Again, I'm not allowing myself to have any small little brushes, so any detail I want to put into this, I have to be very careful and delicate with my knife strokes. Just want to point out the technique here. I'm using the very tip of my knife, loading the front edge of it right there at the very point, and then using that, I'm being very delicate but deliberate with my movement so that I put it right where I want it to be. That's the only way I can get these little detailed pops of light, because there would be some color on those background trees. They're not that far away that they're totally just grayed or blued out, but I don't want to have too much detail, so only a little bit. I'm going to go back and work on the sky a bit more. I'm not quite happy with it, and like I said earlier, or I may not have mentioned it, I am going to go back at the very end of this painting after it dries and make a couple small changes to it. Back on those foreground trees, and I'm going to keep painting away here. Using the point of my knife, I'm going to scratch in some trunks, cutting through the layers of paint back to the white canvas. I may go back later and actually put in some brown of some trunks and actually put in paint for them, but for the distant trees for sure, just cutting through looks fairly effective. It's a trick I borrowed from Bob Ross, and while his style is very different than mine, and he has a very unique way of doing things, not always maybe the best way of doing things, I do like the way he just cuts in really quickly some details with the point of the knife, and so I kind of stole that. That's one of the few things that I really do appreciate about his artwork, is the way he does put in some detail fairly quickly, and it's a nice little shortcut, especially if you're trying to go fast, like I am, because I want to keep this recording not too long, like I said. To create the tree trunk that you see I'm making over on the right, I just put a bit of paint, a roll of paint, right on the front edge of that knife, and then press straight on into the canvas. I am then going to go back and start adding this foliage here, and I'm going to be using a mid-tone green and add a bit more umber to it to give some darks. You can't see the light without the dark, so be sure to put your darker colors usually first, and then you can lay some highlight colors, some lighter lemony yellow greens. On top of that, it's going to look fantastic and realistic overall. One of the things that I actually went back after this painting had dried, and actually off camera, was I went back and took some of the blue sky color and poked a few little holes of blue, just put a little splotch here, a little splotch there, and it looks like the light is kind of filtering through the tree leaves, because trees are not this dense, and I know it's too dense right now, and I go back after it's dried and I fix it so it looks a little bit more realistic and tree-like. So be sure to put in some little spots, some little holes for the light to filter through in your trees. Otherwise you get this sort of mound of foliage that looks kind of strange. I also realized that I covered up a lot of my trunk, but don't worry, I will find it again and I will put it back in once I'm satisfied with some of this coverage. Again, using the knife is less precise, so sometimes I'm having to do things and kind of seeing how it looks, and then maybe make an adjustment or two, and in the process I may end up ruining what I've already done. But that's okay. Painting is a process of discovery, of exploration, and that's one of the things I really, really love about it. Really going back to town on the sky, bringing in some more white and bringing in some lighter clouds here. I just didn't feel like it was working and reading correctly. And again, I'm going to take that blue and get rid of it. The dark cobalt blue will be gone after I stop and really work on the sky off camera. There's a couple of really good things going on with this sky. There's a lot of knife work, and it's very frenzied and busy, which is great. You have lots of different angles and things catching the light, and that's good. It's very dynamic and moving. It keeps the viewer's eye in a constant state of motion, kind of jumping from highlight to highlight, and that's also good. Another great thing about this sky is that it's a little bit darker at the top, and it starts to fade to very light at the horizon, and that's normal. You usually see that. The way I'm getting that lighter colors, I'm actually putting my clouds right at the horizon. But sometimes you will also just have it be fading, a gradation of a darker blue to a lighter blue, and that works just as well. You don't even have to put the clouds in if you don't want to. Just a nice pure blue sky, just like a cloudless sky would be just as nice, I think. I like the clouds because I think they added dynamic nature, like I said, to the painting overall and create some depth and interest, but you don't absolutely have to have them if you don't want to. It's one of the great things about painting. It's personal and you can just customize it how you want. I just want to note here that I'm adding some more blue to some of these spots here in the background. And the reason for this is because I want to be sure that I am having enough distance in the back there. So putting a little more blue into my trees in the far distance will help push them back into space because the atmosphere is between you and those trees. So a little bit of the blue is going to seep in to that color. Now I'm a little bit overdoing it. I'm going to go back with some lighter colors, but as long as there's some blue in there, it will look more or less correct. To me at this point, it's a little bit too yellow. The meadow is just kind of not quite the right color. So I'm going to bring in some of this mid-tone green, and it's going to help overall and sort of pull this together a bit more. Another thing I want to point out that I'm going to do is I'm going to help divide this meadow up a little bit with this little path, this little brown path I'm going to put in right here in the front. It's going to look nice. It's going to pull the whole thing together. And I think it gives the viewer something else to kind of indicate this receding back into space. Now it's a little bit wide at the front. I'm going to fix that in a minute, but first you want to kind of get it in there first, and then you can go back and kind of cover up the spots you don't want with some lighter greens and some lighter yellows. Again, it's a little bit too yellow in the meadow, so I'm going to fix that as we go along. Taking some lighter umber mix, it's just some white and some umber, and putting in some highlights onto this path. I'm just using a very, very feather touch, very light touch to put in this upper layer of paint. Here come those greens that I was talking about. Just starting to bring those in now. Oh yeah, that's looking a lot better. I have to say, this piece is really coming together now, and I think I'm almost done. Just a few more moments, and we will be finished with this piece. A bit more green in that tree. It needs to look like a tree, and not too much of like a yellow alien thing. I tend to overdo my yellow, so be careful with those if you're trying to do it yourself. You can really overdo them, and you gotta watch that. I need to go back and put that trunk in again, but overall I'm pretty happy with this piece, and it's looking pretty nice. And especially at the end, you're going to see the final piece in full light, and you'll get to see it with the finalized changes that I made, and it just looks really great. I'm really happy with it. So overall, I want to say thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you've enjoyed it. We are nearly done here, and I just thank you so much for supporting my videos and commenting and liking and sharing this and subscribing. I really appreciate each and every one of you who takes the time out of the day to watch what I do, and I thank you for all your feedback as I've been doing these and getting a little bit more people watching them, so that's pretty exciting. Thanks so much.